The sky split open like torn metal, and fire rained down over the once quiet valley. The earth forces had no warning. One moment, birds sang and children played near the forests. The next, screams filled the air as a ship, larger than any human structure, hovered above, blocking out the sun like a shadow of death. Captain Alira Voss stood at the command tower, watching the chaos from a secure base hidden deep in the mountain. Her fingers trembled slightly on the console. She had read about the Tralga species, the galaxy's apex predators, but never imagined they would come to Earth. They didn't invade for resources or power. They hunted for sport. The beast had no name in human language. The closest the translators got was Groen. It wasn't a single creature, it was a biofused war beast, armored in living metal, driven by rage and instinct, impossible to control. It tore through tanks like they were paper. Entire battalions vanished in seconds. Guns, missiles, plasma, nothing worked. When the War Council played footage of Groen in action, soldiers wept, generals argued, some suggested surrender. But Alira stayed silent. Her eyes didn't leave the screen. There was something strange in the creature's eyes. Behind the fury, there was sorrow. As if it wasn't fighting by choice, the world's resistance united faster than ever in history. Old enemies shook hands, human and alien alliances formed. The battles moved from ruined cities to orbital stations and distant moons. Still, wherever Groen went, death followed. They sent poison, drones, AI assassins. It shredded them all. In secret, Alira formed her own mission. Not to kill the beast, but to understand it. Her team called her crazy. She smiled and nodded. Then chose a small crew, trusted scientists, and flew toward the last battlefield, Ragnar Crater. Groen had been spotted there 3 nights ago. The crater was now quiet, surrounded by scorched trees and wrecked mechs. They landed at dawn. Alira stepped out first, wearing her cobalt blue exosuit, marked with the symbol of peace. Her helmet was off. She wanted the creature to see her face, no weapons. Just her voice, her presence. Her team stayed back, armed but hidden. One of them whispered in fear, "It's suicide, Captain." She didn't reply. For hours, nothing moved. The silence was thick. Then, the earth shook. A low growl echoed through the trees. Metal cracked and branches snapped. Groen emerged from the smoke like a god of war. Twice her height, plated in dark green armor that pulsed like it was breathing. Its eyes glowed gold, locked onto hers. Alira didn't flinch. Her voice was calm. "I know you're tired. I know you didn't choose this." The creature snarled, but didn't charge. A massive claw tore into the soil. She stepped closer. "I saw it. In your eyes, you remember your home, don't you?" The forests, the sky before it turned red. The beast let out a deep, trembling sound, not anger. Something else. Suddenly, her suit's cum lit up. "Captain, get out, it's charging." But she didn't move. Groen raised its arm and then stopped. Inches from her face, the claw hovered. Alira closed her eyes, trusting her instinct. A moment passed, then another. She opened her eyes. The beast had dropped its arm. Its massive head lowered slowly, almost in shame. Behind her, her team was in disbelief. Did it just surrender? Someone whispered. Alira reached out, placing her hand against the armored chest of the creature. It didn't pull away. The warmth beneath the surface was real. Alive, she felt its heartbeat. Slow and deep, like a drum buried under stone. That night, Alira didn't sleep. Neither did Groen. The creature sat beside her ship like a silent mountain. It made no move to flee. It didn't growl or roar, just sat, watching her, as if waiting for something. She offered food. It ignored it. She spoke softly. It tilted, its head listening, not as a predator, but like a dog remembering kindness. Alira knew then, this beast wasn't untamable. It was misunderstood, Trapped in war it didn't ask for. Trained to kill, but something inside it had broken free. Something ancient, maybe even gentle. And for some reason, it saw her as more than a soldier. Maybe even a friend. The next morning, Illyra stepped out of the ship and found the beast still there. Groan hadn't moved from its spot. Its large armored body was curled near the engine ramp like a guardian. The green panels of its living armor shifted gently as it breathed. She approached carefully, slow and calm. Her exo-boots crunched on the scorched soil, but the beast didn't react. Its golden eyes opened as she got close. Not wide or threatening, but steady. A spark of recognition flickered inside them, and Illyra knew it, remembered her voice. Behind her, one of the soldiers whispered over the com, "Captain, this thing is unpredictable. One wrong move and you're gone." She turned her mic off and knelt in front of the creature. "You're not a weapon," she said. "You were made to be, but that's not what you are anymore." The wind tugged gently at her hair, but her voice was steady. Groan exhaled. It was a deep sound, like a boulder shifting beneath the earth. Then, slowly, it lowered its massive head toward her. Illyra didn't move. She let it come closer. The armor brushed against her shoulder, warm and pulsing. Its breath smelled of ozone and metal. She could feel its trust growing. She raised one hand and pressed it to the side of the creature's face. Its surface was rough, but not cold. Alive. Groan stayed still. Then, with a slow and almost delicate motion, it nudged her hand back. Not in anger but curiosity. It was the first time since the war began that anyone had touched the beast without screaming. Illyra returned to the ship and ordered the rest of the crew to stand down. "No weapons," she said firmly. "Not unless I give the order myself." There was silence on the channel. No one argued. The footage of her standing beside Groan had already started to spread across secret networks. Some called her insane. Others called her humanity's last hope. For the next 2 days, Illyra stayed at the crater site. She studied Grohan's movements, its expressions, its behavior. It followed her but never attacked. Sometimes it walked in circles near the trees. Other times it sat still for hours. It didn't eat. It didn't sleep. It simply watched her. At night, she sat beside it with a data tablet and sketched patterns of its body. Every muscle moved. With purpose. Every piece of armor was etched with ancient designs. Her AI assistant scanned for biological data, but received strange feedback, like the beast was rejecting analysis. "It doesn't want to be understood by machines," Illyra whispered, looking up at its golden eyes. "But it might let me understand it myself." The beast's head tilted slightly, as if listening again. On the 4th day, a scout ship entered orbit. It belonged to the Zarn Dominion, one of the alien factions that once helped humans fight back. But Illyra didn't trust them. She never had. They were the ones who genetically refined Groan. They saw it as property. A living weapon that escaped their chains. The ship demanded that Illyra surrender the creature. They called it the bio-asset. They used no name, no sign of respect. Just commands. Illyra stared at the transmission screen, jaw tight. "No," she said simply. "It's not your asset. It's not anyone's." The officer on the other end blinked. "Captain, you are defying protocol. That thing wiped out half your moon. Base last cycle." Her eyes didn't waver. "And yet it sits here beside me like a companion. You sent it to kill. It chose not to." The officer fell silent. Within hours, the sky shimmered with incoming drop pods. The Zarn weren't going to argue anymore. They wanted their beast back. Whether Illyra was in the way or not, her crew prepared for battle, but Illyra stood by Graon. "You feel it, don't you?" she whispered. "They're coming for you, to put you in chains again." The creature growled low, its body tensing. She placed her palm against its neck. "You don't have to run," she said. "But if you fight, Fight for yourself. Not for them. Not for me, for your freedom. The creature raised its head. And for the first time since the war began, it let out a roar, not in rage but in defiance. As the first drop pod crashed into the trees, Ji-Aran stepped forward and stood between the humans and the invaders. The Zarn attack was not subtle. Fire lit the edges of the crater as drop pods slammed into the scorched soil. Their soldiers marched forward in metallic suits, rifles aimed, faces hidden behind sharp, insect-like helmets. They expected a broken beast. They didn't expect Groan standing tall beside a human. Alira stayed behind the creature. She had no weapon drawn. She didn't need one. Groan was a wall of living fury, but now it fought with purpose. It didn't charge blindly. It moved with precision. Each swipe of its claw shattered armor. Each stomp split the ground. The Zarn opened fire, but their bullets bounced off the beast's shell. Plasma scorched the air, but Groan moved faster than they anticipated. With a deafening roar, it leapt over a ridge and slammed into the first wave, sending soldiers flying like leaves in a storm. Alira gave no orders. She knew this wasn't her fight to lead. This was the beast's choice. For the first time, it was not obeying programming. It was protecting something it chose to care about. Her crew took position on higher ground. They didn't shoot unless attacked directly. Most couldn't take their eyes off the site. The same creature that once turned human cities to ash now fought like a guardian. After 20 minutes, the second wave arrived. This one brought mechs. Tall machines with thick legs and rotating cannons. They circled the crater like vultures, looking for a weakness. Groan crouched, ready. The mechs opened fire in unison. Dust rose in violent clouds. The air burned. Alira shielded her face and called out, "Groan!" But the beast didn't cry out. Instead, it launched itself forward with terrifying force. One mech was crushed instantly. Another had its cockpit torn free and thrown across the battlefield. One of the mechs tried to grab the beast with an electrified net. Groan dodged, then spun and shattered the machine's leg with a single strike. The net hit the ground, sparking uselessly. The pilot tried to eject, but the cockpit burst open, and a shriek followed. The pilot was pulled free, but not by force, by Groan. It placed the wounded pilot gently on the ground and turned its back. The Zarn didn't understand. Alira did. The beast didn't hate the soldiers. It hated the ones who used them. Inside the Zarn command ship above the battlefield, confusion spread. Reports were filled with panic. Their weapon had turned on them. Their orders to recapture had failed. A new one was issued: eliminate the asset completely. Alira's cum crackled. "Captain, orbital weapon signature detected. They're going to strike from above." Her eyes widened. "They're going to vaporize the crater." She turned to Groan. "They'll destroy everything just to bury you." The beast lowered its head. Not in defeat, but understanding. She didn't beg it to run. She didn't order it to retreat. She simply stepped closer and placed her forehead against its armored chest. "I'll stay with you," she said. "If this is where we end, then so be it." The beast rumbled low. Then it moved. Faster than before. Groan bounded over the ridge and tore through the last standing mech. It leapt into the sky using boosters fused into its back, ancient tech built for something more than war. Its claws dug into the side of the Zarn's command ship, and it began to climb. The Zarn crew inside screamed. Alarms flared. Groan smashed through the hull and tore through layers of armor. One by one, power cores blinked out. The ship shook violently. On the surface, Alira watched the sky burn. Suddenly, the beam targeting vanished. The weapon was never fired. Instead, the ship lost power completely. In its final act of rebellion, the beast had torn out the strike system itself. Then the ship exploded. Fire rained from the sky once more. But this time it didn't bring fear. The crew cheered. Alira stood still, waiting. "He'll survive," she said softly. "He's more than just armor." But no shape returned from the clouds. For hours they searched the crater. Only wreckage remained. A claw, a piece of armor. No body, no trace of life. Her crew tried to comfort her, but she said nothing. Just sat where he last stood. That night, Alira didn't sleep. She stayed by the campfire and stared at the sky. Not as a soldier, not as a leader, but as someone who had shared something deep with a creature no one understood. A bond formed not by command, but by choice. Then, just before dawn, a shadow moved near the trees. A low rumble echoed once more. And Groen stepped forward, scarred, limping, but alive. He walked slowly, then sat beside her once again. Like a good boy. Groen's return silenced everyone at the crater base. The beast limped into camp, steam rising from cracks in its armor. One side of its chest was torn open, revealing thick, glowing muscle beneath, but its golden eyes were clear. It looked straight at Alira, then sat at her side without a sound. She stood slowly and placed a hand on its shoulder. "You came back," she said quietly. The creature exhaled, a deep and soft rumble that rolled through the earth like thunder. Her team didn't approach. No one dared. Groen was still a weapon. But Alira saw something different now. She called for medics, not for herself, but for the beast. The camp's engineer, a cautious woman named Dr. Rain, argued, "It's not human. Our gear won't work." Alira didn't blink. "Then we'll make it work." The team brought tools and scanners, careful not to provoke it. Groen allowed them to get close, watching each one with slow, deliberate breaths. They patched what they could. They couldn't fix the armor, but they cleaned the wounds and stabilized the energy flows. Groen didn't flinch. Not once. As if the pain meant nothing compared to the peace it had earned. That night, Alira stood on a rocky ledge overlooking the crater. Groen sat beside her. The wind pushed her hair across her face. She didn't speak for a long time. The stars blinked above them, quiet and uncaring. "They'll send more," she finally said. "And next time, they won't stop at the sky." The beast made no sound, but she felt its anger through the air. Down below, the crew was receiving encrypted messages. Other human commanders were requesting Alira's presence. The galaxy had seen the footage. The moment the beast spared the enemy pilot, the moment it roared for itself. It was already being turned into a symbol, but symbols don't last long. In war, Alira took the call in private. A transmission from Admiral Juno, commander of Earth's orbital defense. The man's eyes were tired. His voice was cold. "You need to bring it in," he said. "Groen belongs in a lab, not beside you." She stared at him through the screen. "He's not a pet. He's not a lab sample. He's a person." The Admiral leaned forward. "Then he'll stand trial like one." She cut the signal. Alira knew then they had little time. She called her team together. "They're coming for him." "Not Zarn. Our own." Whispers broke across the room. No one wanted to believe it. "We'll move by nightfall. Pack what you need. Burn the rest." Some hesitated. She stared at them. "He saved us. Now we save him." No one argued again. That evening, they left the crater. The ship was old and slow, but its cloaking system still worked. Groen walked beside it until they reached the loading ramp. Then, without being told, he climbed aboard and settled near the engine room. He didn't like the cold of space, but he trusted her now. They flew low across ruined terrain, avoiding cities and satellites. Each hour, Alira checked for signals. The silence only made her more alert. Groen rested but didn't sleep. Its wounds were healing fast. Not fully, but enough to move again. The ship docked at an old rebel outpost carved into a canyon wall. It had no official designation. Just an old symbol, two hands holding a flame. Elira used to come here when she was younger, when she believed in causes more than orders. Inside, she met with allies. Some human, some alien. All rebels in their own way. They studied the beast with wide eyes. No one dared step too close. "We need to hide him," she said. "And we need to start telling the truth." A Zalari historian stepped forward. The truth about what? Elira turned toward Groen. About who really made him, about what he really is. The historian's face changed. The Zalari knew. The files they uncovered told the story. Groen was not just a war beast. He was a guardian, once built for peace. A protector of temples on a lost world. But after his planet fell, his code was rewritten. His mind was twisted by the Dominion. They turned a savior into a monster. Elira shared the files across resistance channels. She showed them the memories encoded in the creature's neural lattice. Images of children he once shielded. Cities he once watched over. It changed everything. The galaxy began to ask questions. If Groen could be changed back, then who else had been broken by war? But Earth's government didn't care. Orders were already signed. Elira Vos is to be detained. The asset will be neutralized. The message came directly from the High Command. She read it once, then burned it. The outpost's walls began to hum before sunrise. Hidden turrets rose from the ground. Motion detectors activated. The warning came from deep space sensors. A stealth team had landed on a nearby ridge. They weren't from the Zarn. They were human. Elira stood near the central console, hands behind her back. Her jaw was clenched. She didn't look surprised. She had known this would happen. The moment she refused to hand Groen over, she had been marked. "They'll try to sedate him," said Dr. Rain. "Maybe even kill him in his sleep." Elira shook her head. "He doesn't sleep like we do. He feels when danger is close." Rain hesitated. "But what about you?" Elira smiled, a tired but firm curve. "He's not going to let them take me either." Outside, the rebel guards adjusted their weapons. The canyon echoed with faint metallic sounds. Groen crouched on the landing pad, eyes glowing dimly in the dark. He hadn't moved in hours. But Elira could tell he was aware of everything. One of the scouts returned from the ridge. 5 agents, camouflaged, fast. He handed Elira a scanner. The readings confirmed what she feared. They were using dart rifles and thermal armor, the kind meant for quiet kills. No one would hear the shots. No one would find the bodies. She didn't give the usual order to defend. Instead, she stepped outside alone. Her boots scraped against the metal floor of the canyon ledge. A spotlight blinked on from above. Her voice echoed into the cold night. "You don't have to do this," she said. "You're soldiers. I was one of you." No reply came. Only silence. Then the wind shifted. A sharp dart struck the ground beside her foot. Warning shot. They were done talking. Before she could move, a second dart zipped through the air straight toward her chest, but it never landed. Groen's claw batted it away mid-flight. The sound of tearing wind followed, and then a scream echoed across the canyon. In seconds, the beast vanished into the shadows, a blur of movement. No roars, no growls. Just silence, broken only by the sudden collapse of distant attackers. It wasn't rage, it was precision. The kind honed through centuries of being used, trained, reshaped into the perfect killer. One by one, the agents disappeared. Their comms went dead. The scanners flickered out. The last one tried to run, but Groen dropped from above, landing without a sound. He didn't strike. He simply leaned close until the agent passed out from fear. By dawn, the outpost was secure again. Not a single rebel had fired a shot. Elira sat by a broken wall, watching the sky brighten. Her eyes were tired, but her mind was sharp. They Won't stop, she whispered. Groen stood beside her, quiet and still. She looked up at him. They think you're dangerous because you're free now. She knew they had to disappear. Not hide forever, but long enough to shift the tide. Let the truth spread. Let others see the change. If Groen could find peace, so could others. Like him, she turned to the crew. We leave at sunset. We find the ones who still believe. The rebel outpost helped prepare supplies. Old star charts were loaded, smuggler routes reactivated. Groen was fitted with a resonance cloak to hide his energy. When the time came, he followed Alira onto the ship again, no leash. No order, just trust. As they broke orbit, a transmission intercepted their path. It was from Admiral Juno again. His voice this time held no threat, just confusion. Captain Voss, I saw the latest footage. You're really protecting it. Alira stared at the screen. Him, she corrected. His name is Groen. The Admiral paused. Even if we believed you, the Council never will. You'll be hunted by every system we touch. Alira didn't blink. Then I'll go where you can't touch us. She shut the channel. They jumped into warp space. Stars stretched and vanished. The hum of the ship became the only sound. Alira didn't sleep that night. She sat near Groen, her head resting lightly against his armored shoulder. She remembered the first time she saw the beast. How the war reports described him as unstoppable, untamable, a monster. And yet now, he watched over her like a quiet guardian, not a slave, not a soldier, but something new. Something powerful and kind. She whispered into the silence, You were never the monster, were you? Ren shifted his weight slightly, a low, warm rumble echoing through his chest. Asterisk. Ship drifted in a quiet stretch of space, far beyond the main trading lanes. It floated near a dying star whose light barely reached its surface. Alira chose this place for a reason. No patrols. No satellites. Only silence. Groen stood at the observation deck, eyes fixed on the red glow in the distance. The star reminded him of home. Not the one the Zarn created, but the one he had before war changed him. He didn't speak. He never had a voice. But Alira could hear him without words. She stepped beside him and stared through the thick glass. It's fading, she said. Just like they thought you would. The beast didn't move. His eyes stayed on the slow-burning light. Alira turned her head toward him. But you didn't fade. You survived. And now they're afraid of that. A message came through the ship's internal alert. A signal marked as encrypted and ancient. One that hadn't been used in over a century. It came from a source known only in myths, the Origin Sanctuary. A place where creatures like Groen were once made. And maybe once healed. Dr. Rain rushed to the bridge with the decoded transmission. Her hands trembled as she handed the tablet to Alira. It's real, she whispered. Coordinates, invitation. They want him to return. Alira read the words slowly. There were no threats. Only one sentence repeated again and again. We remember who you were. Groen didn't need convincing. When Alira showed him the signal, his body shifted slightly. The markings on his armor pulsed with a softer green. She had learned that meant something close to hope. They set course immediately. The journey took 2 full rotations through the outer belts. Time slowed in deep space. But the air on board was filled with purpose. No one asked questions. Everyone knew what this meant. They arrived at a planet that didn't appear on any current maps. It hung in a small system surrounded by dust and debris. The sanctuary was hidden under layers of false signals. As they approached, the clouds split, opened and revealed a vast temple built into the mountain of a golden canyon. It was ancient, carved from stone and glowing with veins of light. As they landed, the ground itself shifted to accommodate the ship. The structure breathed like it was alive. Groen stepped out first. His claws touched the soil slowly. His gaze scanned the horizon. He had returned to where he was created. Figures emerged from the temple, not machines, not soldiers, but beings that glowed softly, draped in robes made of woven light. They didn't speak. They bowed to him as if welcoming a lost king. Alira followed him closely. The figures did not acknowledge her, but they didn't block her either. They led the two through the long hallways, each wall covered in carvings. Growan's history was here. His story had always been written. He was never meant to be a weapon. He had been built to guard life. Inside the central chamber, they came to a pool of light. Not water, not plasma, something different. Living. Energy. One of the robed elders gestured toward it. Growan turned his head slightly toward Alira. She nodded once. "Go on," she said. "It's time." He stepped into the light slowly. His massive body sank into the pool like stone entering sunlight. The energy wrapped around him, flowing through every scar, every crack. His armor began to change. Not just repaired, transformed, softer in color, brighter. The hard lines melted into elegant shapes. The lights in the chamber dimmed. The pool began to rise. Growan lifted from the surface, standing tall again. But something had shifted. He looked newer. Not just healed, but whole. The elders bowed again. Then they spoke in one voice. He remembers now. And he is remembered. Alira stepped forward, unsure of what to say. Growan lowered his head. She reached out and touched the armor. It was warm again. She whispered, "Is this what you were meant to be?" He gave a soft, vibrating growl that pulsed through the floor. The elder stepped to her side. "He still needs you. A guardian needs a guide. The bond cannot be broken." Alira nodded. "Then we go together." She turned toward the exit. Growan followed her without hesitation. Back aboard the ship, the crew stared in awe. They had seen a monster, then a protector. Now they saw something even greater, a legend reborn. Alira sat in the command chair, eyes fixed on the new coordinates glowing on her screen. Not a destination, a mission. The galaxy was still broken. There were others like Growan. And they needed to be found. The ship's engine hummed. Growan stood at the window, head high, armor shining in pale green light. No longer hunted, no longer feared. He was what he had always been meant to be. News spread fast across the systems, faster than any official broadcast could contain. A war beast once known as untamable had returned from exile, not as a monster, but as a protector reborn. Rebel channels carried the image, Growan standing beside a human woman, no chains, no command chip, just trust. The image cracked walls in high places. On Earth, the Council denied its truth. They claimed it was edited, propaganda, a trick of enemies. But the people had already seen enough. Soldiers in colonies began asking questions. Officers started refusing orders. The fear that once ruled Growan now turned back on those who built him. Alira and her crew continued the mission. One planet after another, they tracked signs of other guardians like Growan. Beasts once turned into killers, now broken and hiding. Some were lost completely. Others responded to signals the sanctuary gave Alira before they left. It was a long search and not all ended in peace. On a moon called Tressanine, they found a massive war beast buried beneath ice. When Growan stepped close, the ice cracked. The creature inside opened glowing red eyes and prepared to strike. But when it saw him, it stopped. Something ancient passed between them. A memory older than pain. The second beast did not speak. None of them could. But it followed them without being forced. It joined the crew silently, sitting near Growan. During starflight, still and alert, they named it Kern. As the crew grew, so did the threat. The Zarn Dominion launched a new campaign. Not open war, but covert assassins, planted spies, sabotage. One of their bombs nearly took out the medical bay. Only Grohun's instinct saved the lives of 3 engineers. Alira knew it was time to strike back, not with guns, not with fleets, but with truth. She made a broadcast, her voice raw, face unfiltered, standing beside Grohun. They called him untamable, she said. They lied. He was always meant to protect, not destroy. And he's not the only one. There are others. We are finding them. We will help them remember. The message shook every major system. Some planets rebelled instantly. Others called for her arrest. But the voice had reached deep. Inside command ships. Inside barracks. Even inside laboratories were silent beasts. Weighted in chains, the sanctuary sent a second signal. A final piece of Grohun's memory had been unlocked. The location of the core forge, the ancient chamber where the original Guardians were awakened. It had been buried for centuries, sealed behind planets torn by war. Alira's new course was set. The planet was lifeless when they arrived. Black mountains, acid winds, broken towers. But beneath the surface lay what they came for. A gate carved into crystal. Covered in dust, glowing only when Grohun placed his claw against it. The gate opened slowly. Inside, the chamber was vast and full of silence. Rows of empty cradles lined the walls. Symbols blinked on, one after another, casting soft light across the room. The forge remembered them. Alira stepped inside with Grohun and Kern. She felt the weight of history settle on her shoulders. This is where it began, she whispered, and maybe where it begins again. Grohun walked to the center. A pillar rose beneath his feet. Light poured upward, surrounding him in a pillar of warmth. Then the cradles began to awaken. 1, then 5, then 20. Each one glowing softly. No creatures stirred yet, but the signs were clear. The Guardians were calling to each other. The signal was active. Outside the chamber, a warning alarm blared. The Dominion had arrived. Not a scout this time, a full cruiser, weapons hot, demanding surrender. Alira didn't hesitate. She turned to her crew. We don't fight to kill. We fight to protect this place, this truth. These lives. Grohun let out a growl low and powerful. Kern stepped beside him. Both moved toward the entrance of the forge, not as beasts but as defenders. The same way they were meant to be. Alira stood between them, holding nothing but a signal beacon in her hand. If they come, she said, we show them who you are, not with force, but with memory. They fear what they don't control. So, we show them they never needed to. The ground shook. Ships broke the clouds. The sky filled with fire. But Grohun did not move. He stood calmly at the gate, waiting, not for war, but for recognition. The Dominion cruiser descended through. Black clouds, its engines roaring like angry storms. Light from its underbelly turned the forge's mountain into fire. Inside the ancient chamber, alarms pulsed softly, but Alira did not move. Neither did Grohun or Kern. They stood before the gate with calm strength, not afraid, not eager. Simply ready. The forge responded to their presence. Energy flowed through its old systems. Symbols on the walls pulsed like heartbeats. The cradles behind them began to hum. The Guardians inside were still asleep, but their presence was stirring something larger. Outside, the Dominion forces landed with brutal precision. Troops poured out in rows, armor gleaming, weapons drawn. At their front marched High Enforcer Kelrin, tall and cruel, wearing a cloak of living steel. His voice rang out through speakers. You are trespassing on sealed ground. Surrender the creatures, or be buried with them. Alira walked to the top of the steps, arms raised, holding no weapon. We are not trespassing, she said. This place was theirs long before it was yours. You buried it because you feared it. But now the galaxy remembers. Kelrin sneered. You think memories will protect you. You think truth matters when Power speaks louder. His troops raised their weapons. Behind her, Groen growled softly, not in anger. In warning, Illyra dropped her arms. I don't need to speak louder, she said. I just need to be heard. She turned and placed her hand on Groen's chest. The signal beacon in her other hand began to glow. The forge reacted instantly. Waves of light poured from the chamber. The ancient walls shook. The mountain groaned as systems not used in centuries roared to life. The cradles cracked open. Inside, other guardians stirred for the first time in generations. The Dominion troops hesitated. The sky above the mountain flashed as energy fields activated. Ancient defenses long forgotten created a shield above the forge. Kelrin screamed. Orders, but many soldiers stepped back. Groen stepped forward. No weapon, no roar, just presence. He moved slowly, armor shining in green light, golden eyes fixed on the rows of invaders. Every step echoed across the valley. Kern followed behind him, silent and strong. Then the guardians emerged. One by one, they stepped from the chamber. Different shapes, different armor. Some tall, some broad, all reborn, all connected. They stood in a line behind Illyra, silent but ready. The forge had called them home. And they had answered. The Dominion forces fell back. Their lines broke, not from attack, but from realization. They were no longer facing weapons. They were facing protectors. Beings older than their empire. Built not to destroy, but to defend. What was sacred? Kelrin aimed his cannon at Groen. You belong to us, he shouted. You are ours. You were made for war. Groen raised one clawed hand and opened it slowly. From his palm, a symbol glowed, a memory from before the war. A child's face, a garden. A peaceful world long lost. The troops lowered their weapons. Illyra stepped beside Groen. Her voice was firm. You can leave now. Or you can fight. A battle you've already lost. Kelrin stared at her, jaw tight, breath heavy. Then he turned without a word and walked back to his ship. The Dominion cruiser lifted into the sky and vanished. Silence settled over the valley again. The guardians returned to the chamber. Some remained outside, watching the horizon. Their eyes no longer burned with rage. They glowed with purpose. With memory, with peace inside. Illyra sat with Groen near the ancient pillar. She rested against his side, eyes half closed. They'll come again, she said. But now, we're not alone. Groen turned his head toward her. A soft vibration filled the air. Not a growl, not a warning. A sound like distant thunder softened by wind. She smiled. The forge would not be hidden anymore. Across the galaxy, other signals began to pulse. Other guardians awakened. Other truths came to light. The cycle of war had been broken. Not with force, but with choice. Illyra stood once more, hands behind her back, looking over the cliff where it all began. Groen stood beside her, the once feared beast, the legend. The guardian, her companion, not a monster. Never again.